Welcome to Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com YouTube as well as the mobile app. He's Paul Dottino. I'm Lance Medow with you for the next 60 minutes. Multiple ways you can interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. You could also hit us up on social media using hashtag GiantsChat. He is at GiantsWFAN. I'm at Lance Medow, one word, last name, Medow. Today's program, as always, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. And we are broadcasting from the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. So it was actually a busy weekend for Big Blue. As reports indicated, they added 3 players. 1 is official, 2 are still according to reports. So we're going to dive into that, and then obviously we'll get into a variety of other topics as we move forward here on Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. So, Paul, let's start with the wide receiver position. And ever since they lost Wan'Dale Robinson, clearly the Giants were looking for replacements, but I think the key operating phrase is cost-effective replacements, given you don't lose Wan'Dale Robinson for the money he got and then all of a sudden spend it again. That, to me, is counterproductive. And who they brought in, I think, makes sense from a stature physique standpoint, because I think the 2 players we're going to go over fit in nicely to fill the void left behind by Wan'Dale Robinson because of a similarity in terms of skill set. So Calvin Austin they brought in for the Pittsburgh Steelers. His signing is official. He was a 2022 draft pick, a 4th rounder. So he was with Pittsburgh for the last 4 seasons, 5'9", 162. And then Darnell Mooney is, according to reports, he has been with the Bears as well as the Atlanta Falcons each of the last 2 years, 5'11", 180. I'm bringing out the measurements to just make a point with respect to similarity for Wan'Dale Robinson. And then, unlike Austin, the tie-in for Mooney is that he was with Matt Nagy for his first 2 seasons in Chicago. Nagy, the new Giants offensive coordinator, and had his best season in 2021 when Nagy was the head coach / play caller, and that was when he had his lone 1,000-yard season. So 2 one-year deals, according to reports. You're not locking your life away, which I think also makes sense because, listen, Paul, if it works out, great. You found 2 reasonable replacements for Wan'Dale Robinson. If it doesn't work out, you have the flexibility to move on and explore other options a year from now.
Well, I think the interesting part about this for me is that when they brought in Isaiah Likely from the Ravens, it indicated that they were going to emphasize more of a slot tight end. And that's something that they really originally wanted to do years ago with Evan Ingram. But that never really worked out very well. So when I saw that, it was like, okay, so Likely's going to get a ton of snaps. He's going to be a very large part of the passing game. They'll de-emphasize the wide receivers at least some. And even if it's only temporary while Neighbors gets up to speed, I'm sure once Neighbors is back in the lineup, he's going to get his targets, okay?
Sure. But it's a little bit of the unknown right now as it stands for the start of the season.
So that's kind of the way it looked. And then all of a sudden, they pivot a little bit, and they go after 2 additional wide receivers who are proven. They've got a track record in the league. Austin is a terrific route runner and very quick and fast. And obviously, playing with the Steelers, do we really need to tell you that Harbaugh knows a little bit about the player?
Just a tad,
got to see him twice a year.
In the division. Sure.
Okay, so clearly, he had an admiration for him and knows that there are ways that they're going to use him. So that says to me, perhaps he's going to be more of a matchup player, because I still think Likely is going to be a slot tight end. But I think you're going to wind up seeing Austin utilized more on specific weeks depending upon the matchup that they're playing. I don't necessarily know that he's going to be a full rotation type of player as much as he'll be a schematic guy based on the game plan that day. Now, the other receiver that they signed, Mooney, that's a different story. I think Mooney is a guy who could challenge for much more of a role in the game plan, because he's a guy who can, not only is he capable of handling the slot, but he also handles boundary stuff too. He is a quality receiver. He's had 1,000 yards. He had another 900-yard season. You mentioned the connection to Chicago. Nagy was there when they drafted him with the Bears, and he was a regular part of their passing game. So I think Mooney is much more, and you could tell by the amount of the reported dollars that they spent for each of the players, Mooney is going to be a regular in the passing game. Now, that may be, I don't know, maybe they plan on using a bunch more packages that have 4 targets in it, where there's 3 receivers, and likely. That could be. We may see 2x2 sets, 1x3, 3x1s. And I suspect, based on, what Mooney's track record is, I think he's going to be much more involved in those packages than will the Pittsburgh receiver. At least that's the way I see it, right?
I agree with you.
Look at the money that they supposedly spent. What does that tell you?
Sure, but on top of the money, okay, let's put things in perspective, and this is what I think you were hinting at somewhat. Calvin Austin has 84 career receptions. Now, granted, he didn't play his first season in the NFL. He was hurt in 2022.
Correct.
But putting that aside, Darnell Mooney nearly had his total career receptions for Austin in one season. He had 81 catches in 2021. That was his lone 1,000-yard year. So Austin, even though he has played double-digit games each of the last 3 seasons with the Steelers, was not nearly targeted and utilized as regularly, which is what you were getting at, compared to how Mooney has been tapped into, whether it was with the Bears or the Falcons when he wasn't with Matt Nagy. So usage, forget the money, Paul, indicates to me Mooney has a pathway to be a much more regular contributor as opposed to Austin.
Well, there are 3 ways to look at this: the resume, the skill set, and the money.
Yeah.
That's actually 3 different ways. That tells you Mooney is going to be a regular part of the snap count. It's just that simple. But the bottom line is this: they have really enhanced the depth of that wide receiver room. And, the other day I had this conversation with Matt when we were on the show, and I know, it got a little feisty, and a lot of people were some people enjoyed it, some people didn't.
Oh, really? Wow. What did I miss?
Yeah, he misunderstood an awful lot, and in reality, we were kind of saying the same thing, but he just didn't understand that. But here's what it comes down to, right? You never want to draft hungry. That was always the rule amongst personnel guys and scouts. You don't go into the draft drafting hungry. If you have a gaping hole at a position, and it's like we've got to fill it when we come out of this selection process, it's going to wind up hurting you in the long run because it will alter your draft decisions, and in all likelihood, you'll get burned. If you put need too high on the scale, if you let it weigh too much on the scale, you'll get burned.
Yeah, because you're going to start to reach as opposed to get good value.
Exactly. Okay? So we agree on that premise, correct? It's pretty obvious. That's an easy one to agree on.
You want a full belly to utilize
if you can.
What you just said.
If you can.
Yes.
Okay. Now, in terms of what do you need? What are your needs as a team? How do you fill out your roster? There are 3 levels of need on every roster. Okay? Parcells taught me this a long time ago, and it still sticks. There's the desperate need when you have a gaping hole in your starting lineup. In other words, you look at your roster today and you say, these are my starting 22. But that position and that position, you know what? Not only do I not like those starters, I don't think I even have a functional guy on the depth chart. There's a gaping hole there. That's when you're hungry, right?
Sure.
That's when you're hungry. You go into the draft saying there's a gaping hole at that position. I desperately need someone who could help fill that position, and that is going to alter your draft mentality. Right? We agree on number 1.
I'm with you. I'm following.
Number 2, the second level of need is you ask yourself the question, do I have a hold the fort guy? Now, Parcells always used to call them hold the fort guys. To translate for the rest of you, that means you have a guy on your roster who is functional enough to get you through the season. He won't be a glaring problem. He may not be great. He may not even be very good, but he's good enough. He's functional enough that you can get through the season without being destroyed. Okay? That's a hold the fort guy. You just want to be able to get through the year. We're going to patch it together and get through the year. If you have a hold the fort guy, your need is now lessened. It's not a desperate need because it's not a gaping hole. You have a hold the fort guy at the position. The last 2 years, going into the year, that was Greg Van Roten. He was a hold the fort guy. And you know what? He held the fort really well the last 2 seasons.
Absolutely.
And he might wind up being a hold the fort guy this year, too. We don't know. That's the second level of need that Parcells would always tell us about. The third level of need, and he used to describe this in different ways. I'm kind of simplifying it into the 3 levels. The third level of need is we've got a starter. We're good. We've got a guy who can start at that position, but boy, we don't have any depth at all. In fact, if he goes down, the drop-off to the next guy down is huge. It's a steep drop. And if he doesn't stay healthy, the guy behind him, and we talked about this for a couple of years earlier in Andrew Thomas's career, right? If Andrew Thomas goes down, who's behind him?
Yeah, swing tackle or somebody.
And that guy is not a good option. In fact, it's going to be painful, right? So that is your depth need. Okay, that is your third level of need. There's the desperation with a gaping hole. We have a hold the fort guy, so the need is lessened. And then the third level of need is we've got our starter. We love him, high quality starter, but cross your fingers because if he gets hurt, we don't have depth. That's the third level of need. Okay, you got me?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so you agree. Well, you understand what I just said.
I understand. I thought we would now circle back to applying it to
this is where I'm going.
Okay.
This is where I'm going. This is why
that's what I figured.
I went through this.
Yep.
So what the Giants have done in the course of the last week and a half, well, gaping hole would have been if Illuminor walked out the door, but he didn't. They were able to retain him. Gaping hole would have been once Okereke was cut at middle linebacker, but they took care of that. So that's not a gaping hole anymore at middle linebacker. The other inside linebacker spot would have been a gaping hole, but they were able to bring back Micah McFadden, who I'm going to say, based on the question about how well he'll bounce back from injury, you could argue he's a hold the fort guy because you just don't know.
There's still questions.
Right? There's still questions there. So he makes the need now a second level need. That's a hold the fort guy situation. I don't think it's a desperate gaping hole anymore because Micah came back, right? The wide receiver spot, they've got now hold the fort guys. That's no longer a gaping hole. It's no longer a gaping need because they've just signed 2 hold the fort guys. And that makes a difference because you're not at that gaping hole spot anymore. I look at the Giants roster right now, and I would even say this to you. By bringing back Evan Neal and by bringing back Aaron Stinney, who both came back last week, I think both of those guys could be considered hold the fort guys at right guard with the potential of Greg Van Roten coming back. So I don't think there's a gaping need at right guard either. You might have a hold the fort guy between those 3 people, those 3 names. Again, Van Roten, we don't know. But you could argue there's a hold the fort guy there. So that's not a gaping hole anymore. So I look at it and I say to myself, well, the receiving spot is now a hold the fort guy situation. It's a level 2 need. The right guard spot is now, I think it's a level 2 need. I don't see gaping level 1 desperate needs anymore. Now, that doesn't mean the roster's finished. It doesn't mean the depth chart is complete because in truth, what you want to do is erase all 3 of those from your chalkboard. It's hard to do. But I don't see gaping, desperate needs, the first level of need. I don't see that anywhere on this roster right now. I think the Giants at least have hold the fort guys at spots where they are somewhat questionable.
But they could still very well address a position with their 5th overall pick that
absolutely
could very well be somebody a year from now that would be ready to step in
yes.
and take that position. Case in point, I agree with your assessment. Mooney and Austin are hold the fort guys, but given they're only on reported one-year deals, if you drafted Carnell Tate, just in a hypothetical, with the 5th overall pick, there is still a need to bring in a wide receiver because those two guys are scheduled free agents a year from now, and there's no guarantee you're going to re-sign them. Maybe they have good years. The market changes. You need to protect yourself, and there could be an opportunity where value and need match up with that 5th overall pick, and you can address the wide receiver position, is what I'm getting at.
We agree totally.
So that, now, I think, could align.
And you would also agree with me that before they signed these two veterans, the wide receiver spot was more of a gaping need.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even when we talked about before free agency started and us assuming that Wan'Dale Robinson was going to get interest elsewhere, which we had said all it takes is one team, and that's what came to fruition, then you said to yourself, okay, no Wan'Dale Robinson. Malik Neighbors, a question mark as to whether or not he's going to be full go to start the season, given the significant injury. Then you have Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt, who we had talked about many times on this program, still a looming question mark. And does a new coaching staff perhaps change his trajectory? But if you go based on evidence, you can't say that he is a reliable option at this point. So that's what they were working at. Now you have Slayton. You brought back Gunnar Olszewski, who I thought showed nice flashes. Whether or not they want to use him as a wide receiver, I think he's proven he can be. You got Austin, you got Mooney, and you got Isaiah Hodgins. So now you're talking about, okay, power in numbers, volume. These are guys that I'm not saying they're putting fear in the eyes of the opposition. I'm not saying they're taking the tops off the ball. And I'm not saying that they're long-term answers. But I think based on the nucleus that you have, you're not in desperation mode where if you don't bring in a wide receiver in the draft or you don't bring in a wide receiver tomorrow, you're worried about the numbers game.
Right.
That they at least prevented. But that versus long-term security at the position are two different conversations.
And
that's what my point was about. Using the 5th overall pick specifically at that position would not be a bad idea.
Well, and that's why I double back on this and say this is why they've really opened up their selection process at 5, where they could truly, even more so, weigh best player available. Because without a gaping hole, because you have now hold the fort needs, level 2 needs, you don't have any more level 1 needs. So if you want to draft Tate, go ahead. Great. If you want to draft Styles, go ahead. Great.
Yep.
You want to draft Downs? Go ahead. Great. If you think any one of those guys is a true, bona fide, superstar, blue chip player, because you don't have any more level 1 needs, you can take them. Because now you can concentrate more on best player available and, to your point, long-term value. That's what the Giants have done. They have lessened the need component in their draft strategy by filling out a bunch of holes with hold the fort guys. And I applaud them. I think they have done a marvelous job with how they handled this. And again, there are some things that, we still don't know. We don't know about Neighbors' health. We don't know about Van Roten, if he wants to come back or not. I mean, clearly there are some small things. Scadaboo's health. Quite frankly, we think he's on track, but we don't know. If they decide, you know what? If they want to go for Jeremiah Love, I personally would not. But if they want to do it, you know what? They're in a position where they can now. It's a lot easier to do that, to draft any position on the board by going best player available, because they no longer have any level 1 desperate need spots on the roster.
It would be interesting, though, if they did go in that direction, only because, and I understand it's a new coaching staff, so when new coaching staff comes in, philosophies change, but in fairness, the Giants have drafted a running back in each of the last 2 years.
I know.
So you have two guys on relatively manageable rookie contracts. I understand Scadaboo's coming off the injury, but I mean, Tyrone Tracy's gotten a lot of work and a lot of experience. Even if Scadaboo was still questionable health-wise once you got to the spring, I think I'd still feel okay where you have Tracy. You figure as the season progresses, Scadaboo will get stronger. And then you can always bring in a reasonable veteran running back as you get closer to training camp,
think so,
right?
too.
I mean, there's that pathway. What I just mentioned, I think, is feasible.
I agree.
You agree?
I agree.
Okay.
I would not draft Jeremiah Love personally, but that's why I tell you folks, I don't predict what the Giants will do. I'm not into this, I was told, sources say, I understand. I don't go there. I tell you, I look at the situation and I calculate it based on my experience and knowledge, and I tell you, I personally would not draft Love. If they decide to do it, I understand that there is a logical path that you could make the argument. Scadaboo is coming off a broken ankle, which, by the way, I think was broken in more than one place. I think he said when he had his surgery. It was a serious deal. So, well, just the optics made it look serious if you saw what happened on the field. Oh, it wasn't good.
It was like a Dak Prescott type of injury, if you recall, that he suffered against the Giants a few years back.
So, if they decide to do that, there is a logical pathway to the Giants drafting Love at 5. I personally would not do it, but I would not call them crazy if they did.
No, not at all. Well, listen, Paul, at this stage, and as long as we've been covering this league, nothing surprises me in the NFL.
No,
okay?
it does.
You'd be hard-pressed to show me something that would catch me off guard. Teams make decisions for a variety of reasons, and the old cliche is you can never have enough at any position because you can't predict injuries. Nobody has a crystal ball. So I would never fault a team for bringing in a position that maybe looks good on paper. All I'm saying is if they didn't add a running back in the draft, I still think they're in good shape to manage that spot. Also, by adding Patrick Ricard, you figure, okay, you've got a seasoned fullback who, as long as you put a guy behind him that sees the field well, you figure that running back can be productive because you've now invested in a key position in conjunction with the offensive line. Now, Ricard, as he even discussed on the conference call with reporters, has not had many carries throughout the course of his career.
No.
So it's not as if they didn't bring him in and said, oh, now we're going to spread the wealth and Ricard is going to be a key component in the run game. I would not expect that to happen. But if you brought in a veteran running back, if you took a flyer on maybe a Dante Miller and gave him a shot in comparison with Tyrone Tracy and some of these other guys, I think that they would be okay and can have a productive and manageable run game. The only position, though, that I wanted to throw out that
Corner?
you had run through, okay. I wouldn't say it's a gaping hole, but I guess I would say I'd feel a lot better about it if you could tell me that Van Roden was committed to returning. So I still think right guard, as you mentioned, Aaron Stinney does have starting experience in the NFL.
And he's not that old.
No, he's not that old. So you have somebody that could slide in. Evan Neal still remains a huge question mark.
No doubt.
Also because the work at guard is non-existent. That's the other thing. So that's another reason why you're bringing him back. It's a low-risk, high-reward move. But the proof is not there. So if you don't have GVR in the equation, then my, I guess, volume of confidence dips in terms of it not being as much of a hole right now as perhaps you had laid out. So I would say of the things, at least on offense, that's the closest to maybe not gaping, but hole. Okay?
Okay.
If Van Roden doesn't return. And then I would say, I'm not campaigning to use the 5th overall pick on this position, but perhaps the necessity and aggressiveness in finding somebody that plays guard and center becomes more prominent as you're going into the draft if Van Roden is not on the roster at that point.
Logical.
That's how I would classify that, using your analogies and your labels that you mentioned with respect to Parcells.
I think there are 3 levels of need. Again, based on the Parcells philosophies that that I was brought up with. And on defense, there are certainly 2 positions where there are level 2 needs. Not level 1, but level 2. And that would be, I think you could talk about defensive line and corner, right? I think those are the 2 where there are level 2 needs. If you want to consider hold the fort guys between Alexander and Golston and Robinson Harris, I think those are kind of hold the fort guys right now. I don't know that I necessarily feel great about any of them as guaranteed they're the answer as a starter, but I think at the very least they're hold the fort guys. So I'll go level 2.
I would agree with you there.
That's a gaping hole, but it's something you'd like to address if you could.
Yeah, well, and the other thing that I'll add, and I know this is more of the pass rusher component, but with Kayvon Thibodeau entering the final year of his contract, I'm pushing defensive ends, defensive linemen all together. That also brings me to level 2.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking about, remember, you know me, the draft is not about this year, it's about years moving forward.
Gotta be.
So that gets thrown into what you're talking about. And of all of these players that we've been analyzing over the last few weeks, the one position that they have not brought in an established veteran at is the defensive line spot.
Correct.
So I'm with you there.
And you have to wonder if the 3 defensive linemen that I just talked about, if maybe they actually do have higher expectations for them than maybe what we have seen so far.
Sure. Meaning a few of the veterans that you mentioned with Alexander, that they think they can get accomplished this season in the rotation.
2 years ago, Golston had a really good year for the Cowboys.
Correct. Well, I was very high on his addition last offseason because of what he did with Dallas.
He got hurt, and last year kind of got thrown by the wayside with him.
Yeah.
You know, but if Golston...
The at-bats wasn't there this season. The opportunities, I would say.
Again,
it's not
probably because he was hurt.
Sure, but you didn't see enough to say he could get back to what he did with the Cowboys.
No.
Yeah.
But, so that's why I'm going level 2. So you're on level 2.
I am with you.
And then cornerback, I think signing Newsome takes the cornerback spot out of level 1, okay, and makes it a level 2 now. Because between Adebo and Banks and Newsome, I think we expect that it's reasonable that you'll have 2 starting boundary quarters out of those 3 guys. I think that's probably likely to happen. Okay? It would be hard for me to believe that 2 of the 3 or all 3 are going to flame out. I don't think that's going to happen. I think you can get 2 guys who are going to be at least hold the fort capable. I think. I mean, I can't see, regardless of where Banks' head is at these days, and I hope he's got it right, but I don't think Adebo is going to have another year like he did in 25 because his career says that he won't. And Newsome certainly has ability. I know it didn't work out well the last year with Cleveland and Jacksonville, but again, talking to him about it, he was nicked up. He did have to change schemes right in the middle of the season last year because he was traded to Jacksonville. And, he's looking for a fresh start. I just talked to him the other day, and he's all about, I want to be a long-term Giant. He's looking at this as a 1-year prove it to say, hey, I am a top-flight corner in this league. He was a number 1 pick, and he was on the all-rookie team. He's like, no, I want to show people I am that guy, and I want the Giants to know I'm going to be here for a long time. So that's his mentality right now. So I got to feel that you're going to get enough. I wouldn't mind adding, but I think that's now in that need 2 level in my mind.
Well, I'll use what I mentioned on offense. As I mentioned, I think the right guard position is as closest to a hole as you'll find on the offensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. I would probably put corner in that department. Not gaping hole, but closest to a pressing hole, pressing need. Because I'm with you. If we just look at volume, they got 3 guys. You got Newsome and Adebo and Banks, who are all veterans. They've been in the league a few years, but there's questions tied into each. Adebo also, I would say, can he hold up and stay healthy this season? Okay, that remains. Newsome, as you mentioned, split with 2 teams. Also indicated, by the way, that he's more comfortable on the outside than the slot.
No question.
When he spoke with reporters. Doesn't mean that he can't play, but I think he looks at himself more as an outside corner.
No doubt.
So then by you and I breaking this all down, I think then the question is, and maybe they utilize one of their safeties, defensive backs at this position, but with Cordell Flott no longer in the equation, who is your slot corner? Who do you feel good day 1 of the regular season that is going to be your, I'll use your terminology, your hold the fort guy in the slot?
Well, if Phillips is hurt.
Yeah.
Right? So if Phillips is hurt right now, it's got to be Washington. The Baltimore Raven.
But
they signed.
But keep in mind, he's coming off a torn Achilles and only played 4 games last season.
Understood.
So, I'm just throwing out, once again, I'm not trying to dig deep to find more question marks, but you've spread the evidence out.
It's
still feel and
he
go.
would be, to me, he qualifies as a hold the fort guy, which, again, keeps that need at the second level for me.
Okay. But I just, my major point here is that if Phillips does get hurt, or one of these other corners gets hurt, and you have to think about that going into the season. You can't say, oh, we got 3 guys, everything's great, because as we've seen with the Giants and other NFL teams, when you least suspect, you're going to lose a player, and let's not be naive. All of your starters are not lasting all 17 games.
No.
It's not feasible. It won't happen. So you have to go through this game plan, and the more and more you do that, the more and more you wonder, okay, is there that security blanket with respect to one of these guys going down? And I don't know if they have a security blanket.
I think your Corey Blacks, your Art Greens, those are those other guys who you really don't know enough about to know how good of depth they can provide if they have to play snaps. You just don't know the answer to that right now. But again, we're also talking about a team that's not a Super Bowl contender in 2026. We're talking about a team that hopes to be more competitive, and if things go well, and John Harbaugh is optimistic and hopeful that maybe they could be a playoff team. So, again, when you go through your levels, your 3 levels of need, part of that has to be, well, what are you looking at? If you're a Super Bowl contender, well, then your 3 levels of need get graded differently than if you're just a playoff team. Because obviously, a Super Bowl contender, you don't want to have any ones. You really don't want to have maybe more than 1, 2, and you don't want to have more than maybe 2 3s, because you think you're a Super Bowl contender. You want to erase as many of those levels as you possibly can. But when you're a team right now that's just looking to get to the fringe of the playoff conversation, well, you're going to have a bunch of positions that are need 2 or need 3 levels. There's no way to avoid that because you're not advanced enough yet.
Well, and it's also year 1 for John Harbaugh.
Correct.
He's just putting his touches on the roster. So you're not going to all of a sudden revamp everything overnight. And contracts don't allow you to do that because of the salary cap and so forth. But he does know this firsthand, Paul, because I would say 2 of the last 3 years in Baltimore, he got hit by the injury bug pretty hard on defense specifically. And he saw guys dropping like flies and the toll it took on that side. So he knows whether he views this team as a Super Bowl contender or not, he needs to prepare that they're going to lose some personnel as the season goes by. And on the subject of depth, one other player that I wanted to mention, because I mentioned off the top, they added 3 over the course of the weekend. According to reports, they have added Elijah Campbell, defensive back, mainly a special teamer who spent the last 5 seasons with the Dolphins. He was on the Jets briefly. He was also on their practice squad. Campbell, if you look at his snap counts over the course of his career, he has played primarily on special teams. Defensively speaking, he's played no more than 13% of the defensive snaps. That was in 2023. Everything else has been single digits. Last season, he had 16 defensive snaps with the Dolphins. So this was a special team guy. And let's face it, they have also prioritized that with Jordan Stout, an all-pro punter, coming in, and Jason Sanders, the new kicker, who was a Pro Bowler several years back, coming off an injury. But you could tell, and it's no surprise because Harbaugh has a special teams background.
No doubt.
He said, if we're going to be more competitive and we're going to put ourselves in position to win games, field positioning, tackling, all of the things that have come back to bite the Giants in recent history, he also made sure that that was a point of emphasis in terms of what they're doing to shore up this roster. 2
other items I want to just mention, and we can close out the free agent talk. Both of the receivers that they just brought in, or reported to have brought in, really good at catching the ball. They're not dropsies guys. All right, if you look at the full body of their career, I believe Mooney had one Mooney or Austin. I think one of them had 1 year where they had significant drop issues, but last year both guys had hands of glue. They catch the ball. The Giants have had a lot of dropsies issues over the last half a dozen years. It has been a problem. These guys catch the ball. Likely catches the ball. You don't want to be screwing up opportunities with drops. And Harbaugh's not going to tolerate that. It's obvious because that's a trait that these guys, they're good at catching the ball. And then the other item I want to mention is that Jason Pinnock, the former Giants safety, who has reportedly come back and agreed to terms, that also enhances the depth at the safety spot. Remember, because Dane Belton had 100 tackles last year.
He went to the Jets.
And he went to the Jets. So now you didn't have a third safety. Well, guess what? You now have a third safety who, he's okay. He qualifies as a hold-the-fort guy for sure.
Well, him and Ardarius Washington I would put in the same category. Paul, you really have
go.
4.
Right.
You have those 2 backing up Newbin and Holland now.
So now, if Denard Wilson wants to use that 3-safety package that he really prefers, guess what? They now have bodies that they can do that, which again lessens the need component in your draft at 5. That doesn't mean you can't draft Downs. If for some reason they look at it and they go, Downs is a super duper stud, gotta have him, well then go ahead. Go ahead, then take him at 5. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with taking the best player available. There's never anything wrong with taking the best player available because that's the one player who you haven't forced up on your board. It's only a need guy who can be forced up on your board. The best player available can never be forced up because that's where his grade says he should be. So, to me, they want to take Styles, they want to take Downs, they want to take Styles, Downs,
Tate,
Love,
we talked about.
Tate.
Yeah.
They want to take any of these guys. In all honesty, they could logically create a path to take any one of those guys now because of how well they've set them up with eliminating need level number 1. And that was my overriding point about this Giants free agent class. I'm glad we were able to sort that out.
One other thing I just wanted to add to your point about the wide receivers and maybe not being struck by a case of the dropsies. Austin and Mooney have also had to work with a plethora of quarterbacks over their short careers thus far. Think about Mooney in Chicago. You name it. I mean, he's had to work with Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, Mitchell Trubisky, Tyson Bagent in Atlanta, Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix Jr. Austin, well, the Steelers have had a new quarterback, it seems, every single year. Exactly. Aaron Rodgers hasn't been there forever. So I think both of these wide receivers, now you say, oh, well, now they have to get used to Jackson Dart. Well, it's really nothing new for both of them because they've done it on an annual basis. So that is another thing that I think is maybe somewhat appealing. Not that you're hoping to do that throughout your NFL career, but you figure, all right, hey, these guys have been through this before. It's not like all of a sudden a frustrating process.
I do think we're also seeing some of the attraction of John Harbaugh because some of these deals that the Giants have been able to execute for some of these quality players and some of these veterans at very reasonable contractual details, I think that shows you Harbaugh's an attraction. It's not just playing with Jackson Dart or playing with a team that some people think is on the up. But I think John Harbaugh is a guy who, you know what, people say he's got a good chance to win and win quickly. We want to be part of that deal.
I'm not disputing that, and I'm sure that played a role for some. I mean, I know it played a role for Patrick Ricard based on what he told the media. I mean, he said basically if it was a Pee Wee football team, he would sign up. But I do
Newsom
think...
said the same thing, and he didn't play in Baltimore.
Sure. But I think the other aspect, and this is just my personal opinion, Paul, I think there's opportunity here for a lot of these players to get on the field and produce. Case in point, Likely's been playing behind Mark Andrews, okay? Yes, there's Theo Johnson here, but I said this last week, and I'll repeat it in case you didn't hear it. Likely could be the Martellus Bennett for the Giants several years back, where Bennett came behind Jason Witten and had a career year.
Oh, yeah. When he was in Dallas, he was behind Witten. Yes.
Well, what I'm saying is it could be that pathway for Likely.
Oh, I think that will be.
Okay. Well, I'm just throwing that out. So
I mean, look at the numbers they reportedly signed Likely for. They didn't bring him here to catch 25 passes.
Well, but regardless of the money again, he's going to now come into a position where with Bellinger no longer here and Theo having some issues with drops, as you referenced, Likely could come in, solidify himself as the number one guy, and get a boatload of targets. Okay.
He's going to be the lead slot tight end. He is going to get, I mentioned this last week, and Nagy came from Kansas City, where they use Kelce as the slot tight end. He's going to get a chunk of Travis Kelce plays.
Yeah, well, even in Chicago utilized tight ends too when Nagy was there.
He's going to get them.
So that, to me, I think played a role. We brought up Calvin Austin. You mentioned, okay, he's not necessarily going to be Mooney in terms of snaps, but depending on Neighbors' health and how things shake out elsewhere, Austin, 84 career receptions. Now he steps on the field here. Maybe he sells himself as a more attractive wide receiver, so when he hits free agency next year, he all of a sudden brings up his stock. And I could go through this with several other players. Yes, I think Harbaugh's attractive. That goes without saying. But I do think we're going to bring you in. We envision putting you in this position, and you're not just going to be a complimentary player. I think that sold a number of these free agents as well.
And quite honestly, Neighbors' injury, again, with the unknown factor there, I think Austin is the guy who would benefit the most if Neighbors gets off to a slow start.
I would agree with you. Yeah. And if I'm signing a one-year deal, I want to go to a place where I'm going to get on the field so that if my future is not with this team, at least I have enough film and tape to sell other teams. And I think that's why also Greg Newsome found this place attractive, because he said, okay, Banks and a Debo, some question marks there, Flott is gone. I have a legitimate shot to come in year one here and be one of the two starting outside corners. So all of that, I think, played a role. Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com, YouTube, as well as the mobile app, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants, as we are broadcasting from the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. Let's open up the phone lines as we move forward, and we check in with Rolando in New York City. Rolando, welcome aboard. What do you got for us?
Hi, guys. I'm a long-time listener, but it's my first time calling in.
Cool.
First, I want to say, hi to Paul. Pretty big fan. Really enjoy, hearing your insight.
Thank you.
Just in your perspective. I'm pretty young. I'm only 26, so I like always hearing, your thoughts on things. And also, Lance, I wanted to say hi to you, too, because I like how you articulate your points. And I'm a pretty big fan of just the whole team. And shout out Pearson, because I know Pearson's the GOAT. So shout out Pearson.
Pearson doesn't get many shout outs. Yeah, we got Johnny Mack today.
We got Johnny Mack today. Show him some love now.
Yeah, Rolando, he's now the regular. Because Pearson, it got to his head. So Pearson now has taken on other assignments that he thinks are more pressing. So we're not going to play him this clip, because that is going to make his head explode. So we have Johnny Mack, the true professional, holding down the fort here, to utilize Paul Dottino's terminology. But yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I have three quick questions. So my first question is, I was a little disappointed that Dane Belton didn't sign back. I saw that he signed with the Jets for around $4 million, and I wanted to get your insight on that. If you guys thought the contract was expensive, or you guys didn't think that he, he didn't have a good enough season. Then my second question was on the Mooney signing. What are your guys' thoughts on the overall fit? Does he play in the slot, or does he play on the outside? And then my last question is, who would in your guys' opinion, not in the team's opinion, but in your guys' opinion, who would you guys take with the first two picks in the draft?
All right, Rolando, we'll let you go on that note, and appreciate the phone call, and thanks for breaking through and giving us a ring for the first time after listening for so many years. We certainly appreciate that. So 3 different items. The first one he asked about was the Dane Belton contract that he received from the Jets.
Career high, 100 tackles last year. He's usually been around the ball every time he's been on the field for the Giants. Was tied for 6th in the NFL last year with 20 special teams tackles. So I suspect, if you look at what the Giants have done so far this year with the free agents they brought back, guys like Art Green, who was very good on specials as well, and then the additional players they brought in, it seems to me that they wanted to get more bodies on the special teams coverage units, as opposed to maybe giving Belton more money and putting him in one guy. They kind of spread it around, because they got 3 or 4 special teams guys who all seem to be able to help that unit. And in addition to that, they just apparently have reportedly agreed to a deal with Jason Pinnock. And I think we would all agree, Pinnock was twice back-to-back seasons as a starting safety with the Giants. He had 85 tackles, and I think we all believe that he played pretty good football. So if you want to equate it that way, they got more bang for their buck by bringing back Pinnock and adding several special teams guys.
Well, continuing your theme on the special teams front, I think to answer the last caller's question, you entered an offseason this year, keep in mind, where it was a pressing need to upgrade both the punter and the kicker positions, okay?
And they spent money to do it.
So how many teams have that task going into the offseason? You had to address both of those positions, and as Paul just added and took the words out of my mouth, you had to use resources on positions that, let's face it, they're important, but most offseasons, fans and everybody else that covers the NFL, they're not thinking about, you got to spend money on a kicker and spend money on a punter. Now you had to take resources, put that towards those two spots. Well, who do you have to sacrifice? You got to start sacrificing your third safety. And I think they said to themselves, okay, if he's going to get an offer from a team that is going to put more money in the third safety position, and not that we're worried about what the Jets are doing, but they went out and revamped that safety position. They brought in Minka Fitzpatrick, Andre Sisco. So you could tell that was where they wanted to go with their resources. Every team is different. All it takes, once again, is one team. I think the Giants are of the mindset, Belton's coming off a productive season, but it's just a luxury we can't afford to compete with at this point. So going back to the question, no, I'm not surprised that the Giants did not retain Belton, and I'm also not surprised in the amount of money that Belton got, given, once again, the Jets needing to go in a different direction at that safety position.
Also, the Mooney question, he can play inside and outside. He has the ability to play both. And I'm sure
and a
the
good
Giants
separator, by the way,
both.
too, regardless of where he lines up. That's one thing that we didn't necessarily talk about. Guy can create separation, which is key.
Terrific route runner. And third question was about what you're going to take in
terms of where you go with the
rounds.
draft. Yes.
Best player available. It's just that simple for me. Again, with the way the Giants have constructed things over the last week and a half or so, it's clear to me the best player available is going to be a much heavier consideration. The need component is lessened, and that's quite clear. It's quite clear. So you could make a logical case for any one of those supposed top guys who might fall to them, whether it's Tate, whether it's Styles, whether it's Love. Heck, if they believe now, and I think pushing up one of those two tackles, is rich for me. But if they think that one of those two tackles that everybody's talking about in the top 12, if they think one of those two guys is going to be an all-pro guard, you know what? If they decide to do that, because we talked about guard being a level 2 need, if they decided that Mawanoa is going to be an all-pro guard, if they think Fano is an all-pro guard, you know what? At this point now, I would not scream holy high hell if they took him. Because if that's what their evaluation is, that he's going to be that good, hey, it's the offensive line. Who would cry about, if you believe you're getting a blue chip stud on the O-line, who would cry about that? Now, if you're taking him as a tackle, I think that's high. And someone would say to me, well, aren't tackles more valuable than guards? You never take guards that high. Well, what if they honestly believe that one of those two tackles is going to be a Quentin Nelson type?
Yeah. Well, I was going to bring up his name.
Right?
For those that say you don't take guards that high, well, I don't think the Colts are complaining about what Nelson has done.
We don't know that.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anybody say it. But if they think one of those two tackles is going to be literally a multiple-time Pro Bowl guard, if they really believe that, you could make a case to take him at 5.
Absolutely. If you slide him in, I think you'd want to see something on film maybe to feel a little bit more secure.
That's how you feel. That's how I feel. But what if they think?
He could be your guard. He could be your swing tackle in the event that Thomas or Illuminor gets hurt. I understand Marcus Bowe is on the roster, but it's far from a given or conclusion that he's solidified that spot. So, yeah, I'm totally fine with that. How many times do I say they drafted a team that has played primarily left tackle in college? You start him out on the right side. There's no rule of thumb that just because he was a left tackle, you have to play him at left. If they feel that he's got two-way talent and there's a pathway to get him on the field, I mean, I'd hate to use the 5th overall pick and he just sits on the sideline the entire year.
Look,
but if you figure that you could get him in as a guard and a swing tackle, yeah, absolutely justifies it.
It's really simple here. At pick number 5 especially, not as much at 37, but at 5, you have to draft the guy who you believe can have the most long-term impact on your team. It's that simple. Right?
Sure. Which is why I keep emphasizing it's not just about 2026.
And it's whoever they believe it is. Whoever they believe has the longest term, highest impact on their team, that's the guy they should take at 5. It's just that simple. They have alleviated the desperation level 1 need positions on this roster. That's the beauty of what they did. They now have the luxury to talk about long-term maximum impact.
Yeah, so, I mean, what we outlined to answer the question is they can go in a variety of different directions. Carnell Tate makes a lot of sense, given what we talked about earlier with respect to the wide receiver position. Sonny Styles at linebacker because of McFadden coming back from injury and whether or not he has long-term prospects moving forward. We just talked about the offensive line. And Reuben Bain Jr., for example, I keep going back to Kayvon Thibodeau is entering the final year of his contract. So you can't operate where, oh, well, you got Burns and you got Carter and you got Thibodeau. What if they choose to trade away Thibodeau, hypothetically speaking, around the deadline? I'm just going that way. Well, then you don't have Thibodeau for the full season. Or, once again, he walks at the end of next year. Then all of a sudden, you don't have nearly as much versatility. So I could easily justify one of those, I went through about 4 to 5 positions we just went through. It makes sense. When free agency moves along a little bit further and we get closer to the draft, if Greg Van Roten comes back or somebody else, I may start singing a different tune. But as it stands right now, I think you can make a logical case for one of those several players that I just threw out. All right, let's head back to the phone lines. We check it with Rob in Connecticut with us here on BBKL. What's happening, Rob?
Hey, gentlemen. Good afternoon. How are you today?
Doing very well.
Hi.
What do you got for us?
Hey. Well, hey, look, first of all, let me say, P-Dot, I really like that multi-tier analysis. That's a new thing. And you know what? It has given me, a different perspective on the draft. I really do agree now that it really is a win-win situation for the Giants. And it's almost like going back to work after food poisoning. For the first time, the Giants are going into an off-season where we don't feel like we're coming off of sickness. You know what I mean? For lack of a better analogy, gentlemen, you know what I'm saying? But
very few teams coming off of a 4-win season can actually be in a position like the Giants are in right now, where they don't really have level 1 needs on different parts of the roster. To be honest, even if we go level 1.5, right? Lance wants to hedge on a couple spots, and I agree, and I understand that.
Sure,
but just flat out pure level 1 needs, there are none, and that's pretty incredible. It just shows you how badly the team underachieved last season. Really, is what it shows you.
So, Rob, to use your analogy, you drank some soda or seltzer to settle your stomach, is what you're saying. Okay, I'll help you get a little bit closer in terms of where you wanted to go with that.
Well, recently, the last 10 years, I'm talking about going back to work. In the previous night, we had our stomach pumped. That's how bad it's been. You know what I mean? Okay, so
understandable.
So the draft, you know what? My perspective on the draft is, changed after this free agency period. First of all, I think the acquisition of that fullback, Patrick Ricard, I think our offense, if we stay ahead of the chains, of course, I mean, that's obvious, right? And you got to stay ahead of the six. But I think our offense, if we just given with the physicality I think we're going to have, I think we could be ruthless or like deadly. If he's 5 yards and under, I think we're going to be a really difficult team to stop. Just because of the addition of the fullback. And if we get a running back, that's why I'm thinking if we do draft Love, I think we could be really, tough to stop. I think we could be like a mid-90s type, pseudo-explosive, but yet ground and pound type of offense. What do you think?
Well, that's what Harbaugh practiced when he was in Baltimore. I mean, you don't even have to go back. Last season, they had Ricard blocking for Derrick Henry. Okay, so Rob, just think about this. Not to say these guys are not tough in the NFL, but the fourth quarter It's raining, it's wet, you're tired. You got to man up on defense, and you got to be able to collide with Ricard and Henry, and that's not fun. I'm sure most NFL players, right, will tell you. So, I mean, you brought up Love, and I'm not arguing against that, but let's just operate with what they have on the roster. Cam Scatterbo behind Ricard, fourth quarter, it's raining or it's cold. You got to deal with the physicality of those two guys on top of the offensive line coming your way. It makes the opposition uncomfortable, and Harbaugh has subscribed to that for years in Baltimore with a variety of different running backs, by the way. I mean, he brought in guys left and right, veterans, rookies, you name it. He didn't necessarily tie himself to one player in particular, and then on top of that, especially in the last few years, he had the athleticism of Lamar Jackson to throw into the fold. And here you say you got Dart's athleticism. I'm not saying Dart is where Lamar is, but, you know, that adds a whole other item that defenses need to think about. So I'm with you there. I think they have the personnel on paper to get to what you're preaching for. It comes down to the level of execution, but I wouldn't necessarily campaign to say, as we were talking about earlier, Paul, that you're in desperate need of adding another running back right now to get to that level of physicality.
Right.
I will not be upset. Like, okay, everybody, if you go back to hindsight being 2020, you know, when we drafted Shake SB, okay, that was a controversial draft pick. It was. If we drafted a running back though this year, I'm not going to feel the same way. Like, I don't think it'll be a blunder, a draft blunder to select a running back with it, you know, and with our pick, like it could have been in previous years. That's all.
I would add this to you. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish.
Oh, no, I was pretty much done. I think that's why it's a win-win for us. If we draft him, not a big deal. You know, it's not going to be a draft blunder if we go with a running back like it. I know I don't want to repeat myself, but I think if we did draft a running back, that would be fine. I won't be upset about it.
Here's the best way to sum up that.
I want a linebacker, just so you know. That's who I want. But
well, Sonny Styles would fit that bill very well.
And that was one of the players we threw out. And listen, Rob, we'll let you go on that note as Paul responds. Appreciate it.
And just to wrap up Rob's feelings, it comes down to this. There's a really, really, really legitimate chance that, you know, we just named 5 or 6 guys that during the course of this conversation, whether it's Styles or, again, I don't want to go through the handful of guys again. Any one of those, let's just say 5 guys that we mentioned, any one of them, in theory, could be the best player available on the Giants' board when they pick at 5. It's theoretically possible. Styles could be that guy. Tate could be that guy. Again, I'm not going to go through all of them. But any one of those guys could have the highest grade on the Giants' board when they pick at 5. And you know what that means? That means they should just take that guy. It also means that all of the fans out there in Giants Nation are going to be split. Because there's going to be a bunch of people who wanted Tate. There's going to be a bunch of people who wanted Love, a bunch of people who wanted Styles, right? There's going to be a bunch of people out there who wanted Downs. And that means that you can't make everybody happy. So no matter who the Giants take, this is the funny part about it, the downside of where the Giants are, because they are, Rob, they are in such a good win-win situation, it's not even funny. They're in such a great spot to take the best player available, regardless of position, at 5. The downside to that is, no matter which one of those choices they take, there is going to be a group of people who are going to scream to the top of the Empire State Building and say, why didn't you take my guy? If they take Styles, the Downs people are going to be angry. If they take Downs, the Styles people are going to be angry.
Story of our lives.
If they take Tate, anybody who wanted a defensive player is going to be angry. There's going to be an angry group of Giants fans no matter who they take, because there are literally so many good options for them in their spot. They're going to get criticized no matter who they take, even though it's a win-win. Rob, that's the other side to this coin.
It's an interesting question and point with respect to what the Giants would do in the draft at 5 if the running back came up in the dialogue. And I'll go back to a phrase I mentioned earlier in the show. Nothing stuns me when it comes to the NFL. However, with that being said, I'm a big believer in track record, Paul, as you know, when it comes to individuals.
Sure.
If you look at what Harbaugh did in Baltimore, he and the front office did not use high draft capital, and I'm not saying that they had regularly drafted in the top
they
five.
usually drafted low.
Okay, but they did have Kyle Hamilton one year at 14, okay?
Yes.
And they drafted an offensive tackle the other time that they were in the ballpark of the top 10. But even when they were picking in the low first round, you would rarely see them go after running backs. Even Ray Rice was a second-round pick. So my point is, Harbaugh is a big believer in running the football, as we were just discussing with the last caller, and that physicality. But he didn't go out of his way, as well as the Ravens front office, and say, well, let's use a first-round pick on a running back. And on top of the fact, Paul, as I mentioned to you earlier, they've got draft capital already invested in Scadaboo and Tracy each of the last 2 years. And the way that my personal opinion, I like to build a roster, I want draft capital spread across multiple positions so that my contracts are layered, meaning I don't want to have all of the rookie deals at a running back position and then spending my money elsewhere. I want it to be as close to equidistant as possible. If you take the 5th overall pick with Love, now you're going to have another rookie contract dedicated towards a running back 3 straight years.
Well, it's redundancy.
Yeah, correct. Just from a salary cap perspective is the way that I'm looking at it.
And you're taking touches away from Tracy and Scadaboo if you go and grab another running back. So I would be surprised if they took him. But again, if they have a logical course and path for him to be the most impactful guy over the next X number of years, then you have to tip your cap and say, okay, guys, you figured it out. That's what your plan is. Great. Go for it. You can't, in other words, you can't kill him if they take him.
No, not at all.
But I agree with you. I personally would not. I would be surprised.
And I'm with you. I personally would not campaign for that. And I think it would be, I'll preface it where it would be surprising given, once again, the track record of Harbaugh and the Ravens' decision-making. Now, he's got other voices in the room that he's listening to. But when I look over the Ravens running backs and I look at the J.K. Dobbins and the Ray Rices and the Melvin Gordons and the Gus Edwards and the Justice Hills, you're not finding first-round picks even in that group. So I look at what's on the roster. I look at how he's built his teams in Baltimore. It would be surprising from that standpoint. And I think Paul and I are at least on the same page in terms of our reasoning with respect to that. All right, let's head back to the phone lines. We got Shakes in. Speaking of Baltimore, what's happening, Shakes?
Hey, how about that? It's been a while, Shakes. How are you?
I'm all right, Paul. How you doing, Lance?
Doing all right. What's on your mind?
All right, I got a lot of things here, so let me fly my plane and then let me land it. All right. So first off, right, I wanted to comment on the Mooney thing because you say, he catches everything. This is just pre what I gotta really say, but he was worse than Slayton last year in drops. If you go look at the stats.
Hold on. I did check these numbers. I did check them, and they were good. But hold on. Go ahead. Go to your next point. I'll check on.
Go ahead. You do that. You check that out while I'm finishing, right? So hold on, right? With that being said, though, I'm not down on this signing at all. I love this signing, and also to throw a nugget out there, his only 1,000-yard season came under Matt Nagy.
Sure, and we said that earlier.
Yeah, just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
All right, now I agree with you, Paul, with the whole component of the need component. We can go any route. It's a win-win. And for anybody that says, "Oh, we took downs, but I wanted Styles," but yet we got downs. This is a great player that's going to help you win football games. So whatever route they take, even if it's not your guy, are you a fan of your take or are you a fan of the Giants? Because either way, it's going to be great for the Giants.
Right.
Now, with that being said, I'm banging the table for Love. And let me explain all the reasons why, okay? First of all, for the Giant fans that's like, oh, no, we already did this with Saquon. Y'all sound like bitter exes. That's like, oh, I got my heart broken by a blonde. I'm never dating blondes again. Stop that. Stop
That fits with the love analogy, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Stop that.
Yeah.
But by the way, Shakes, before you go anywhere, I have Slayton for 7 drops against 37 catches. Okay? 7 drops for 37 catches. Mooney, 32 catches, 5 drops. So that's 6.9% drops percentage for the season. But for his career, Mooney is under 5%
4.8
in his drops percentage.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Last season, his completion or the drop completion, whatever rating, is more higher than Slayton's. But regardless, yeah, thank you for bringing out that specific number.
Sure.
Now, also, right, if we're talking about needs and agreed, like I just said, agreed that we can do anything. We can go wide receiver, we can go safety, we can go linebacker, we can do anything. But my thing is, the major need is bringing in a weapon. And not only if Love is there, he would be the best player available, but he's also a weapon. You can't just look at him as a running back. You can line him up anywhere. You can do so many things with him, okay? Like, it's crazy. Then the factor of Harbaugh loves to run the ball. He likes to be number 1, number 2, number 3 in the league in rushing. So you got to guarantee to have these rushers. And I love Scatterboo, but we don't know how he's going to return from that injury. Is he going to return on time? And if he does return on time, how is he going to return mentally from that injury? We do not know. So to put all the chips on Tracy, not fair to Tracy. Not fair. It's not. So, again, Love will be awesome in that aspect.
Tracy, let me just jump in here, Shakes. Tracy has been productive in each of his first 2 years. I still see them adding a veteran running back potentially if they don't draft somebody. And I would think with Tracy and a veteran running back, you're not putting everything on the shoulders of Tracy, and I don't think they would put him in that position. If, for example, they didn't take, let's say, Love with the 5th overall pick and Scatterboo's not fully healthy. And once again, I think even a logical person would say, okay, let's say Scatterboo's not 100% at the beginning of the season, at least 5-6 weeks into the year, you figure that he'd be getting closer and closer, that then you'd have him, you'd have Tracy, and let's say, hypothetically, a veteran running back, which those 3 guys, I think, could be very productive in combination with Ricard.
Shakes, the point goes back to what I said earlier. You could actually make a case probably for 5 or 6 different players. So no one's going to tell you you're wrong. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. Now, I would not personally do it, but that doesn't mean you're wrong. And if the Giants do it, I'm sure that they've got a logical pathway to make that choice. I understand. I don't think you're crazy.
Some Giant fans do. But let me keep on going with this, though.
One last point,
the thing about Tracy and Scat being in the way and all that. No, for real, if you look at it and you have all 3 of those, this is Earth, Wind, and Fire 2.0 all over again.
Understood.
You know what I'm saying? The way you can use them is crazy. And the fact of that from the rumors, if you believe it, and I do, you know what I mean, that they wanted to go after Kenneth Walker, but he was just too much money. That tells me that they're going and at top guys for this run back. They don't just want any old Joe Smo. They want a guy that's going to make an impact at running back. Okay? And then my last point was, if you do all this, if you do go Love, I really need maulers at offensive linemen. Like, go get a Wyatt Teller for me, because I love Runyon, but we have a lot of guys on this offensive line that is pass protectors. We don't have a lot of run blockers, so we need to add that. But thank you for taking my call.
You got it, Shakes.
And also, for anybody that wants to debate me on that tape, can I please give me a shameless plug? Go to the Shakedown 2.0 on YouTube or SME 2026.
All right, Shakes.
Y'all can hit me up on there. And thank y'all again.
Call us again, Shakes. You be good.
In terms of Teller, I mean, Teller is still a free agent, the former Cleveland Brown. But, once again, a lot of these veterans are in the same boat as Van Roden, where they may just be waiting to see their options, and you may not have the chance to bring them in until after the spring, the beginning of camp, because they've had so many years in the league, some of these guys, they don't want to go through the grind of the spring. So you have to at least keep that in mind, that Paul and I are operating with what you have going into the draft, not what potentially could come into play down the road. The other thing that I wanted to clarify, Shakes misspoke. Darnell Mooney had a lower drop percentage than Darius Slayton last season. That's a fact. It was 6.9 for Darnell Mooney. It was 7.9 for Darius Slayton.
But reference,
I'm looking at it right here on
I have
Pro Football
Slayton,
Reference.
I have Slayton, but I was only going to say this. I have Slayton for 7 drops last year.
Well, you're talking about the volume of drops. I'm talking about the drop percentage, which I think is more telling.
What does reference have him down for?
The drop percentage for
No, how many drops?
How many drops? For drops, they were even last year, according to Pro Football Reference.
They had him for 5.
But the drop percentage was lower for Mooney than Darius Slayton.
I grade drops tougher than they do. Well, I had Slayton with 7 last year, just FYI.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to clarify to the audience, in case they perhaps have been living under a rock and not paying attention to your statisticians and everything else that you have in the inner workings, but you do your own computations.
I do.
And that doesn't necessarily always line up. My point is with the powers that be on the web.
I'm very harsh on drops.
No, but all I wanted to just make sure, from a factual standpoint, at least according to Pro Football Reference, the drop percentage, they have Mooney at a lower rate
and
than Darius Slayton.
What's his career?
Career, Mooney's at 4.8, Slayton's at 6.3. So for last season and the career, Mooney is lower than Slayton. I just wanted to clarify that based on
Mooney's got
we
good
were discussing.
Hands. That's the point.
All right. With that being said, that is going to wrap up shop here on Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. The archive of the show and our entire podcast network is on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcast. We've been broadcasting from the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackett Zach Meridian Health. Keep getting better. And this latest episode, as always, brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. Pearson actually walked in briefly. I don't know if you noticed. It was almost as if his ears were burning. We're going to have a conversation with him after the show, after that compliment from a caller, in case you're tuning in late. You'll have to catch up and go back to the archive that I just promoted. Paul, good dialogue.
Yeah, it was a good show.
Absolutely. And things didn't get feisty between the two of us, like what may have happened last week with you and SciTech.
Well,
I just wanted to make sure that
we have
everybody's
a
on the
mutual
same page.
understanding of how to build a team.
There you go. Okay. So we can all shake hands and sing Kumbaya after the show. That is going to wrap up Monday's edition of BBKL. For Paul Dottino, I'm Lance Medow. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you on Tuesday right here on 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Have a good one.